Hey, it's Rhett Nelson with EastIdahoNews.com. I am here today with Chad Martin, the superintendent of Jefferson School District 251, along with David Krasper, who's a teacher at Rigby Middle School and also president of the Jefferson County Educators Association.
That's correct.
And then Kendall Lancaster, who's also a teacher at Rigby Middle School. There's been a lot of questions in the community since May 6th when the unfortunate school shooting happened, and we're here to talk about that today a little bit, hopefully maybe answer a lot of questions that people have had. Before we start, and whoever wants to start here, let's go back to that day, May 6th. The school was on lockdown. There was a shooter. We've since learned that there was a 13-year-old student, female student, who fired a gun inside the school, injured 3 people. Walk us through that day when you first heard the news and how things kind of played out.
Well, I think that's been pretty well documented. Like you said, there was a 13-year-old girl, and there were 3 injuries. And I think our staff immediately went into lockdown. Obviously, we've gone back and reflected on that day every day since, and what we did and what we could have done, and along those lines. And for the most part, our staff handled it very well. The protocols we've had in place and we've been practicing for years, they just immediately went into what they've been trained to do, and which I think prevented more harm, which was a very positive thing, that they were trained so well and that they were able to perform the things that they did to minimize the damage that day.
Sure, you've, like a lot of people, have gone back and reviewed all of that. And were there any warning signs ahead of time that something like this was going to happen?
No, I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, and you look back and you think, okay, well, these are things we should have seen and would have seen, and there's nothing that says, oh wow, that's it. That's, and I think every time you have a situation in a school, whether it's this severe or not, you go back and say, what were the things? Because we know kids, it's a tough time for kids. It's a tough time for everyone right now with COVID, and we've gone through lockdowns. These kids have been locked down. They've been told to wear masks. They've been told not to wear masks. And I don't want to blame it on that, but the anxiety level for kids, and as well as home life and other stressors they have. So was there warning signs? Well, yeah, we have 2 years worth of warning signs. We have 2 years of kids just in chaos, and not only with COVID and those things, but the other political things going on in the world, and the hate that we're seeing, and the division among within our own country and with our own community. So yeah, there's warning signs. There's warning signs everywhere. For this specific incident, no, I don't know if that's the case. I think that kids struggle. Kids deal with real things, and we need to be aware of them, and we need to do everything we can to support them. But to be able to go back and say, yes, that's it, we should have prevented it. No, absolutely not. That's not the case.
I think it's also important to know that I know me as a teacher, and a lot of the teachers, we do that. We go back and we're taught to reflect on how we teach and what we're teaching, but we also reflect on the students that we know are having difficult times, or they're not passing, or they're going through these emotional trials. And I know the teachers have spent the time and energy over the last months playing that back in their mind, going back and looking, like you said, to see if there's something we could have done different, or something that would have helped and stuff. And that's just a way to help moving forward.
Someone who was a mother of one of the victims suggested that the school had some warning signs and didn't react appropriately.
So there's certain things that we can't comment on, and that's one of them. And like I say, everyone's going to have a different perspective on what we should have known and shouldn't have known, and going back and saying, oh, well, there's this and this. And, we could go back to probably any one of the middle school students and say, you know what, there's some warning signs, because middle school's tough. Middle school's hard. And they deal with dynamic relationships they're trying to figure out. They deal with home lives that aren't perfect. They deal with all kinds of things. And so I think in any case, you could go back and say, oh, there was things here. And that's the case. I have my own kids in middle school, and could I go back and say, you know what, they were dealing with this, and this. Was that a warning sign? Potentially so. But, I can't speak to the specifics of that, and there's, different ideals about different things. But at the same time, middle school is tough to navigate. And so are there warning signs? What do you consider a warning sign? Hindsight's 2020, and so to go back and say, oh well, we could go back with any student and say, you know what, there were things that they're dealing with. There are things that maybe could drive them to that, and that's why we have teachers in the classroom that love their kids, and they're there for their kids and are there to try to build relationships with kids. And it's really frustrating when all of a sudden it's pinned on teachers for not catching warning signs. That's ridiculous. That's what they do. It's not reported how many things they've prevented and how many times that they've been there for a kid that comes in after school and has this and listens to a kid. So because we had a couple of incidents, yes, that's totally unfortunate. Should it have happened? No, absolutely not. Are we going to do everything in our power to stop it again? Yes. But the key to that is our teachers to continue to love their kids, continue to build relationships with them, and then for us to continue to be able to provide that support. Because our teachers are on the firing lines enough, and it's really concerning for me as a superintendent to see how hard teachers work, how they love their kids, every one of them, and then all of a sudden saying, oh, you didn't catch this, you didn't catch that. And that's just not the case. Now, we will do everything in our power for these things not to happen again. I've been meeting with community groups. I've been meeting with anybody that will listen and say, hey, let's talk and let's figure it out. And believe me, I've heard every suggestion as well. And we're working through those things, and we're going to figure it out. But ultimately, it comes down to what can we do to be a big part of those kids' lives and help them find the support that they need.
You talked about teachers. So you guys are teachers. What has it been like for you over the last 4 months?
Well, I'd be a liar if I didn't say that it's been rough to deal with it. Some of it personally, because as a teacher, I've invested 28 years of my life in Rigby, working with the youth of Rigby, and it's a great community. And I hate to see broken kids and kids that are struggling, and truthfully, broken colleagues that are struggling with the whole aftermath of it. This is a great community. There are great people here, and I'd never stayed 28 years if it wouldn't have been that situation.
I think it's important to realize what we ask of our teachers. We ask a lot of them, and so we just keep adding more and more responsibilities. 20, 30, 40 years ago when we went to school, what the responsibility of the teachers was a lot less than it is now. Parents are both working, and I spend more time with some of the students than they do, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're supposed to do that, but we always have more and more added, and I see the stress level of our teachers keep going up because of because they're going back and they're trying to figure out what could I have done better? What could I have done to help that one student who had a bad day? And we're talking about it 6 months later when the day before I had a student with a bad day that I helped, and we're not talking about it. And then you have legislators that throw teachers under the bus and the school bus. They blame things on teachers, and they treat us like we're not professionals, that we're not doing a job that we've been hired to do. And that sometimes is hard, because we've dealt with a lot in the last couple of years. We dealt with COVID, and then we dealt with our incident. The legislators last year went after teachers quite a bit. They forget that we're Idahoans, that we're here in Idaho for a reason. Some of us moved here, and some of us born and raised here, and we love our communities, and we want the kids to be successful.
I don't work with I haven't worked with a teacher, and I've been at it a long time, that is not really vested in kids. If they're not vested in the best for children, they don't last, right? And I think that's super important, because a lot of the people I work with are hurting because they are so vested into the kids. We don't do this because we get paid lots of money. I'm just going to be honest. I work after school because I don't get paid lots of money, but it hurts me to watch teachers who care so deeply about children, right, that they hurt.
So May 6th, and then 4 months later, just a few weeks ago, there's another gun-related incident. A student brought a gun to school, and no shots were fired. Thankfully, law enforcement was able to de-escalate that situation before anything happened. But you got two gun-related incidents that happened so close together, and so the decision was made to initially to ban backpacks for secondary schools in the district, and then later that changed to clear backpacks. Do you want to just explain the thought process behind that decision?
Yeah, well, obviously, anxiety was high. We have a second incident. And we knew we had to do something. Now, did we think, okay, ban backpacks fixes the problem? Absolutely not. We knew that that was not an end-all, fix-all. But as what we would hope that it did was help kids come back to school without the anxiety of what's in the backpack sitting next to me. That it was very well documented that the guns have been in a backpack. And so it was to help relieve some anxiety for teachers and for students, and at the same time to be able to have some little bit of security. We know that, we understand if somebody wanted to do harm and get a firearm in the school, they could have still done that. But we needed to do something to let our students and our community know, we're addressing this, and students, we care about how you feel. And, I have 2 middle school students at that school. And so I can look at it from a parent perspective and also from a superintendent's perspective. And so that was one piece of the puzzle, and it's a big puzzle. And you're right, and we had some time to kind of think things through, be able to meet with administrators. We talked to some teachers, we heard from parents, and what's a solution that, we're not here to make kids' lives miserable, but we are here to keep kids as safe as we possibly can. And so the clear backpacks was something that we could say, okay, kids are having a hard time getting things to school, getting things back, so here's a way that we can still allow them to do that, but still provide that sense of security for kids as well. Because I know that Kendall was saying in his class conversation, there were a few kids that said, it's nice not having backpacks. Yeah. I feel safer because of it. Whether they are safer or not, I don't know. But if they feel safer, that helps them learn better as well. Mm-hmm. And so again, I know that, and I got plenty of feedback as well, as you can imagine, which is fine, and that's what we expect. But it wasn't ban backpacks, problem solved. Not at all. That wasn't the intent of it, but we hope that was one step to help kids be able to come back to school and feel some sort of security.
Is there more being discussed about other restrictions that are going to be put in place, or any other plans there?
Well, there's a lot being discussed. A lot of it along the lines of what can we do to support kids. We have 2 counselors for 1,000 kids. So that's a caseload of 500 kids for a counselor who's also in charge of class schedules and testing and all of these other things. Is that an issue? Yes, that's an issue. And so there's things along those lines as well that, how can we get funding to be able to let counselors meet with kids instead of be running schedules and setting up schedules and do clerical work. And so that's a concern. And that's not a concern for Rigby Middle School. That's a concern for education in Idaho. Right. Really we need to have counselors that are able to meet with kids and meet their mental and their emotional needs. And so we're talking about ways to do that. We're talking about ways that we can help kids identify other kids that may be struggling and provide support. We're talking about a lot of things that we can do to be able to. But I've met with groups that said, hey, we need to look at metal detectors. Let's look at metal detectors. If that's what it takes to keep kids safe, we'll look at them. But we want to be careful that we don't do anything that has a negative effect on the environment of the school as well. But at the same time, we don't want guns in school. And so we're going to do everything that we can to be able to help parents support their kids and help kids when they get to school. And it's a community issue that's manifested itself twice at school. But it's a community issue, and we're working with community partners to solve that.
Over the last 4 months, we've gotten a lot of emails from people in the community who have said that there's a huge problem with bullying in the Rigby School District. Is Rigby a place that seems to get an overabundance of bullying as compared to other school districts?
So I could speak from my perspective. I've been in several other school districts. I've been principal of other middle schools, and I can tell you every district that I was in, the patrons of that district thought that was where the bullying was the worst. So I think that people see things through their lens. And is bullying an issue? Bullying's an issue at every middle school in America, let's face it. I mean, that's the truth. Bullying's a very complex issue. Is it an issue at Rigby Middle School? Of course. We got 13-year-old kids navigating how to figure out life. Is it something that we condone? Obviously not. Is it something that we address? Yes, it is. Is it a problem here more so than anywhere else? I don't believe that it is. And I believe that our teachers, we have good teachers that are there that love kids and want to be with kids. They're not going to allow that to go on. They're the eyes and ears out there. We have good kids and good families. When we started, you asked a question about, I think along the lines of, has Rigby been kind of a miserable place to live in the last little bit? The answer is absolutely no. There's no other place I would live, because we have good people, we have good kids, and we have great family and a great community. Do we have some incidents happen that we wish wouldn't have happened? Yes, absolutely yes. There's no denying that. And are we going to work together as a community to fix that? We are, and it will be fixed, and we will be better because we've worked together to fix it. But the easy thing to do is to blame it on bullying. The easy thing to do is to say, oh, it's issues that haven't been dealt with bullying, and that's not the case. I can't speak specifically to any of these, but I can tell you that bullying has not come up at all in the investigation in these. And so to just blanket say, oh, it's because of bullying, to be honest, I think that's a cop-out. It's something that, because we're not willing to get to the deeper issues and to figure out what can we do to support kids. Why do we have kids suffering to this extent? And so that's what we need to get to. Will we continue to address bullying as it comes? Yes, it is. But as I said before, bullying is complex. We see on Facebook that, oh, my kid was bullied, but we never see the other side of it. We never see, well, what was the dynamic of that relationship? We never see that, well, you know what, perhaps it was somebody standing up to the bully and that kid didn't like it because he's not used to it. There's so many things, and that's not to make excuses, because if there's bullying going on, absolutely we will deal with it. And to say, oh, bullying's an issue here, is to saying, you know what, our teachers in middle school, they just don't care. You know what, they're not willing to do it, our administrators don't care. And there's nothing further from the truth. We care, we love kids, we support kids. And do I believe it's a problem? Of course it's a problem. Of course it is. When you add middle school years to social media to everything else, it's a problem. Is it more of a problem here than anywhere else? I don't believe that it is. But every incident is unique and individual, and we handle them as such, and we'll continue to do the best we can to address it.
I think it's interesting. I get a good perspective because I work at both middle schools. And somebody asked me the other day, they said, is the culture different at the different middle schools? And I said, there are some things that are starting to change with, you have different teachers and different principals. They're both great schools. And my father-in-law, he's taught up in Rexburg, and so I called him and I needed someone to chat. And I said, it's really hard. We've had 2 incidents in these 4 months. And he goes, you've had 2 incidents in 20 years. And we sometimes, because they were so close to each other, we forget of all the years we didn't have incidences and all the years that we've been doing this that no one ever pays attention to, And I think the culture, because the teachers, like I said, they care about their kids. They want them to be as successful as they can. And so we deal with these things. We deal with kids picking on kids who are best friends one day, don't talk to each other the next day, and they're dating the next day. You go through those emotions and you work yourself around it while you're trying to teach them math and industrial arts and different aspects of education too.
Teachers, right, care deeply about these kids. I can't tell you. I've had the opportunity to visit with many counselors, teachers, administration. They care deeply about these kids. And I don't know if I've ever worked with one that would not shut down an opportunity of bullying. Because let's be honest, when we were kids, we went through it ourselves, right? Whether we were bullied or whether we were the bully, right? We went through that. And it was usually middle school. And as a teacher, it is one of the things foremost on my thought process. I'm not going to let that happen in my classroom. I'm going to stop that in my classroom. And I believe that we do a great job at Rigby Middle School in trying to curtail bullying in our school.
And how so?
We have a lot of programs, but I just think in a lot of ways we have good people working that care deeply about kids, and they're going to do everything they can to stop that, because they don't want that culture. We don't want that culture in our school. We do have good programs. Years ago we started a thing called Dude Be Nice, right? And it is exactly what it says, right? And I believe that we try really hard to implement positive situations for kids.
So is that like a curriculum that you teach?
No,
or-
it's teaching the concept of be nice to each other, right? And we, we're implementing programs now that are going to be helpful. We had bikers against bullies, and it was a good activity for kids, and it gave you a great opportunity to talk to them about that aspect. And I really truly think that we do a great job. Like I said, I wouldn't be here, right, if I felt like that this was a crazy, chaotic place to teach. There's other places I've had other opportunities, but this is a great district, and we try really hard to provide safe and positive atmosphere for kids.
From a teacher's perspective, how are students in general doing after these two things that have happened? What have you seen among students? Are there concerns that they have?
Obviously, they have concerns. I mean, as Chad said, I've had several students say, "It's so nice to not have a backpack." One of them said, "I feel way safer not having one," right? And that issue is kind of beyond the point, really. That the kids themselves they can't help but have some anxiety, right? They can't help but have some anxiety, but I think we've done a really good job of pulling teachers together, doing a good job with administration, supporting us, and being able to help kids be resilient. They're pretty resilient. They like school. I really feel like they like school. I was concerned when we came back in May that I wouldn't have very many. And probably one of the most healing things for me was when I showed up that morning, and my first class, I had 100% of the students there. And it made me feel at ease, and I think it made them feel at ease that we're going to go back to being who we are, because that's who we are.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we try to forget our middle school years. And we forget all the changes and stuff and what we go through as we're developing, as we're growing, trying to figure out who we are and where we fit in the different groups and stuff. But you have to think about these kids. What have they been through in middle school? They went through COVID, a once in 100-year pandemic where they got locked down, all these different things going on. What's the future going to look like? They get a lot of their news and information from TikTok and these social media platforms where it's not always clear, positive, and it goes negative and stuff. So a lot of that has to play in. They're already struggling. They're already going through these different things, trying to figure themselves out, and then you add on top of it an incident like this, and so just like the adults are feeling it too, the teachers are going through the same thing the students are going through. Do I feel safe? Do I feel secure? Am I okay? As spouses send when they send them to work and say you're going to school, how are they feeling in all this? But I think what Chad said is really important is to be able to create those relationships, counselors with 500 students, teachers with classes 30, 35 students. It gets hard to make relationships when you have lots of students. We're working with the IDA, with the Idaho Education Association, to craft legislation so that our counselors can do their jobs and be there for those kids when they deal with all this stuff, and take away some of those scheduling and dealing with administrative stuff that we could probably pay somebody else to do, not someone that has the degree to help those kids, to have more counselors available in times like this. Because we've been blessed that we've had the crisis teams come in and they've brought other counselors for the teachers and for the students. That's been nice to have. But it'd be nice to have some people there all the time to lighten those loads and make those easier to make those relationships.
The next question, which probably doesn't have an answer, is what's the solution going forward? But I guess maybe a better question to ask is, we've had these two incidents now, what are the biggest takeaways from the school district?
So I think from a broad perspective, and you guys can speak more to the classroom perspective, but it's that we've got to provide support to enable our teachers, our counselors, our people that are, feet on the ground to be able to connect with kids. And I know that, a lot of times you say, oh, that's a fluff answer, let's put metal detectors in schools. And there may be some of that too. We're not ruling anything out. But it really comes down to, let's meet the mental health needs of kids. Let's connect them with, sometimes it may just be a relationship with a teacher. Sometimes it's deeper than that. They need trained professionals to be able to really dive into the mental health aspect of it. But if we don't build those relationships with kids, we don't know that. And so it's going to be to continue to be able to do that. We've got some things that we're training kids right now on how do we support each other. How do we recognize if others need help? And the one incident that we had, the latest incident, it was a great example of that. One reason that it turned out the way it did was because a couple of students saw a girl that was struggling, had no idea that there was any weapons involved. You just saw that she was emotionally struggling and went and got help. That's what we want our kids to do. That was handled perfectly. And we had, because of some of the things that we put in place, we had a resource officer in the school that dealt with that. And that's some of the things that's being lost too, is how well our staff handled that and how well they'll continue to handle things going forward. Do we want to catch those things before they get to that point? By all means, yes. And that's what we're trying to do. How can we give our teachers, our counselors the tools to be able to, with everything else that they're juggling and responsible for, how can they connect with kids? And then when they do and they realize an issue, how can we make sure we have the resources in place to support them?
I think too, is having that time to make those connections. We forget sometimes how much external things that the teachers are asked to do with testing and getting to certain places in curriculum, and there's a lot of pressure, especially on your English and your math teachers and your science and your history, and you have a lot of things that you need to get through in a short amount of time. So it's hard to take a day. It's hard to take a moment to go and say, these kids need a day, or these kids need a moment, or this student, they haven't said much in class the last couple of days. Is that normal? Is that not normal? And getting the chance to know them. And we talked about that earlier, about class sizes and just about the requirements the teachers have. I think we've lost the vision of why we do this. What is the societal purpose of our education? What is the goal? What do we want to accomplish? I remember when I was a kid, it was college ready, career ready, and that kind of stays. But is it more how to be a good person? How to disseminate information now, because it comes so fast. I tell my students, when I was a kid, if you took a pack of Trivial Pursuit cards and memorized them, you'd be really smart. Well, the kid today has Google on his phone. He doesn't care when those things happen because they can find it. It's just about processing information. But what do we want to accomplish with these kids so that we can do that and focus on it? Because right now we're supposed to do everything and be everything for these kids.
When I think the results are, I've been in Rigby a long time. I started out at the old middle school, so I've been here a long time.
Okay.
Numbers were completely different. And the opportunity to build relationships with kids comes by having a class size that you can do that in, and that you can have the opportunity. That provides opportunity for you to build relationships with kids. We've gotten to the point that our class sizes through the state of Idaho, not just Rigby, are large, right? And it makes it very difficult for us to make those connections. And I was talking with a friend, and he happens to be in another state as a counselor, and he says, I feel like I only have time to put a Band-Aid when I have a kid come in. And to me, that's sad, right? We need counselors in our schools that have time to be able to do more than put a Band-Aid on a solution with a kid. And I believe we have some of the finest who do their very best. But again, they have 500 kids each, and that's tough.
Is there one thing you want to say to people to, I guess, assure them how much you're invested in the kids and want the best?
I don't know if there's anything to clear up misunderstandings. I think it's just thank you. Thank you for the community that we have and the people that we have. Like, I know that the negative is out there, but overwhelmingly, I've received more positive than negative of support. And even those that have said, hey, you know what, we could do this different. Without fail, when I call them up and talk to them, it's a positive conversation because we all have the same goal. We all want to work with kids and we all want to support kids. And so my message is thank you. Thank you for trusting us with your kids. And we know we've had some instances, but thank you for continuing to work with us to solve problems and to give us your ideas and to meet with us and be willing to sit down and brainstorm and take times. And an example of this, you know, one of the communities I met with, they asked, what's the biggest need? I said, well, the last 2 weeks, we've filled about 60% of our substitute jobs. And that may not translate into school safety, but it does when we're pulling our paraprofessionals out of the classrooms that are extra eyes and ears to cover for teachers and teachers on their preps covering. Since then, this week, we've filled over 90% every day because they came and they signed up and they met our need. And so my message is thank you. Thank you for doing what you do to make our community what it is.
Anything you guys want to add?
Well, I was going to say that the thank you is a perfect way, but let's continue what we started. Parent-teacher conferences are next week, you know, and I've seen attendance go down over the years, but take the opportunity to meet the teachers, you know, to check on your kids. You know, there's Power School, and there's ways the communication both ways, you know. If your kid's having a bad day, worse than normal, or there's an event, you don't have to share all the personal stuff, but check on my kid today. You know, if they're having a rough day, or, you know, I remember sending an email when my mom passed. My one son was 7, 8 years old, and he had a hard time with it. You know, I never thought about telling his teachers, but maybe that would have been a way to help him and to help them, you know, just to create that relationship and to help with the education process. So thanks for your support, but let's keep it going. Let's keep communicating and be there when you can. You know, parent-teacher conferences, back to school nights, these opportunities to get to know the people that spend time with your kids.
I think I'd just say, I mean, you got to second that there's been a tremendous support of people here in Rigby. It's a great place. But I would just second it in saying that it takes a community to raise a child. And I love working with the people I do, and they care deeply about the kids of Rigby. And we'll do whatever we can to help in that community effort for these kids to be successful.